Style takes too long. I can't fit anything. I have nothing in this closet. Oh, I'll just stay home. I need to purge my closet. Oh, but not that dress. Yo, Taylor here. If you ever thought to say one of these phrases, then this show is for you. Join me at the Style Table, where we'll have candid and fun conversations about real women's style issues and wardrobe dilemmas. We will discuss solutions and ideas that will give you a big sigh of relief. You'll learn ways to save money, make money, and enrich the lives of others with the clothes in your closet. We're going to take the stress out of your style. Hey everybody, it's Yo Taylor back here at the Style Table. I am here with the lovely Simone McNish. She is the CEO of Simone McNish Coaching Company, and she is here to talk to us about diversity and inclusion, style and judgment, and how we can be allies. And how we can learn how to treat each other with respect and understanding when it comes to differences in style and business. Welcome to the show, Simone.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
So, I love your hair. I love your glasses.
Thank you.
I love the red.
I feel good today.
So tell us about your business.
Yeah, definitely. So, I wear a few different hats, but my main hat is that I am a DEI consultant and coach. So that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I also do some work in anti-racism as well. And so with my business, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are kind of looking to activate their voice, talk about issues that matter, like social justice, like diversity and inclusion. So I coach them through kind of activating and talking about the things they really care about and value truly. So that's one part of my business. And another part of my business is I do a lot of DEI training. So I do those for corporate and nonprofits and small businesses. So that is what I do. So I do a lot of on-camera time. I also do content creation. So I do like Instagram content, and I also help small businesses kind of come up with inclusive content that appeals to a diverse audience. So there's a lot going on in my world usually.
So you mentioned that you're a blogger as well. So you blog about different situations that come up to help people navigate those situations that might be similar to what they're experiencing at their companies?
Yeah, I kind of use my blog as a starting off point. So I do some common definitions for diversity, equity, inclusion. I talk about things like inclusive content, and I really try to break topics down so they're a little bit more approachable and it's not a bunch of jargon, but really so people can understand how different issues and things like systemic oppression are found within business and within corporate spheres. So that's what I blog about. Way back in the day, I used to have a blog on beauty and hair, but now I do mostly blogging on my actual work, which is the DEI part of my business.
But some of that goes hand in hand. As you know, we're navigating the Crown Act and the whole discussion about what's appropriate or what companies stereotypically may think what's the appropriate hairstyle that's considered professional. How do you have that discussion come up within your dealings with different businesses?
Absolutely. So with the Crown Act protecting specifically Black women against hair discrimination, I think as Black women, so many of us can relate and pinpoint exact times in our careers or in our everyday dealings where someone was discriminating against us actively because we had dreadlocks, or we had an afro, or we had curls that were deemed unruly. So the Crown Act actually protects against that discrimination. Now, what I've noticed is that usually the discrimination and what we call microaggressions, these tiny little bits of racism and discrimination, those kind of go unchecked a lot of times. So, for example, if there's someone who doesn't share the same culture as you and tries to go and pet your hair or say something like, oh, well, that's an interesting hairstyle, right? That can really make us as Black women feel othered. It can really make us feel like we aren't normal people, that we are in this kind of subcategory. And so I see it come up, and that's actually one of the main things that comes up when I consult with companies, and they say, well, we had this incident with our employee and someone went up and touched their hair and they snapped at the person who touched their hair, and their intention was good, right? The person who touched their hair, Susie's intention was good, but it's really less about the intent when someone goes in to touch your hair and more about the impact of, hey, that's my personal space that you're violating, number one. Number two, why is my hair a topic of discussion? If I want to wear it in a wig, if I want to wear it in braids, if I want to wear it in dreads, if I want to do something to it, just leave my hair alone. My hair has nothing to do with the work that I produce or the quality of professionalism that I exude.
So do you find that people who are on, if you're in these discussions, I'm sure you do presentations where you have the whole body in the discussion, the people who might be on the receiving end of the discussion, do they find that it affects some of their thought process before they get dressed for work? We as women, we have enough to think about just trying to find something to wear. And now your hair can also affect how you feel when you get dressed, because now you have to also think about the response that you're going to get from work just because of your hair.
Absolutely. Like, I like to think about myself, and so I live in a very quote unquote progressive place. I live in Seattle, and until I started my own business, so I was in the tech industry for many years, and I never wore my hair in braids. I never would go get my hair professionally braided because I knew that if I came to work with braids, there would be hands in my hair. And there would be a lot of, because I was client facing, there would be a lot of clients with questions, and, you know, there would be very subtle jabs at my professionalism when it's just my hair, right? So I think that absolutely we think about, you know, am I looking professional? But professionality, or not professionality, that's not a word. Professionalism is actually, it's a moving target, and it's really a weird definition. And it's actually kind of rooted in a lot of systems of oppression that say, usually professionalism means that you have straight hair, that you are wearing a button up, that you are doing all these things. And usually professionalism teeters a very close line to whiteness. So we have to be very careful about how we define professionalism, and that's some of the work I do with clients, is look at things like their job descriptions, right? What does it mean to have neat hair and a neat appearance? If you look on the internet, if you look up unprofessional hair, a lot of times what will come up in this racist algorithm is pictures of people who have dreadlocks saying that they have unprofessional hair. Who is deciding what is professional and what is not professional? So it's really important to, I think, for us as Black women to really define who we are and to make sure that we're able to have the agency to express ourselves, and also recognize if we're in a psychologically safe environment where we can have the agency to wear our hair the way we want, to present the way we want. And if we're not in those environments, then it's probably time to think about making our exit to somewhere that will accept us a little bit more.
Oh, wow. So you almost advise that, you know, if you're not making any headway, then it might be time
Time
for
to go.
you to move on.
Hmm.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. I think
Mhm.
sometimes we think that we're going to come in and we're going to change the company, we're going to change the values, but we have to look out for our own mental health. We have to look
Yeah.
out for our own family, right? And a lot of times we stay in toxic situations or in places where our identity and even our physical presence is not tolerated or celebrated. Then we think it's our job to like change this. It's actually your DEI team at your job, or a lot of times there is no DEI team, there is no consultant, there is no word of DEI. And what you have to do is protect yourself and go somewhere where you're wanted and celebrated. It's not easy, but it's there to protect your mental health.
So let's talk about how can you, because you might not have a DEI person at your company, and say if you're a person who your personal style is, you know, traditional African uh, garments, or or a sari or a hijab, whatever your culture is, you feel like this is a part of your religion, your person,
Right.
you want to feel whole. This
Mm-hmm.
is a part of you that makes you whole. How do you and you like your job, but you know there's some tension there and you want to relieve it. How do you create allies?
Mm-hmm.
What are some tips to help you create allies to kind of simmer some of that tension down?
Well, I think first of all, documenting the tension. If it's actually, there are things that have been said, there have been attitudes, there have been you being talked over in meetings, there are, people are making comments about your hijab, people are making comments around the clothes that you're wearing, or, asking questions that are super personal. Document those experiences. Take them to HR. Unfortunately, HR does usually protect the company itself. So they're going to try to
Mm-hmm.
mitigate the least amount of risk for the company. But it's really important if you do have a leadership team and you do have relationships with managers and leadership that they want you to stay, they want to look out for you, bring this to them and say, this is what I've been experiencing. What can we do to change this? Can we advocate for bringing in a DEI consultant? Can we advocate for doing a DEI committee or starting an ERG group? How can we start making sure these things don't happen? Because if you do really like your job, what I've seen is that people usually love their job. They love what they're doing, but they don't love that interpersonal, these microaggressions that are happening. And so they end up leaving maybe to do a similar job at another company that they are celebrated. There is, let's say, racial diversity. There is diversity of religions. There are, the company does talk about their values more often. So if you really feel like the job is worth it, trying to find, I would say, people who can advocate for you and co-create and work alongside you if you want to take up that task. And not everybody wants to do that task. Not
Right.
everybody wants to help. And it's also, for me, speaking as a Black woman, it's not my job to find the allies. It's their job to advocate for me. And
Right.
if there's no one who's willing to step up, I know that's not an area that I need to be in because I know I'm not being protected.
So if someone approaches you and says, "You know what? I don't like the fact that so and so touched your hair," or someone
Yeah.
asked you. Some people do just ask,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes I would almost rather people just ask
Of course.
before they touch me.
Always. Don't touch
Just
me. Yeah.
ask. If you want to know, just ask.
Right.
And then when that person, if the person's an ally or wants to be an ally, just help them by saying, remind people, maybe just tell them, maybe you might want to tell your friends, if you want to be an ally to me, one of the things is just tell people, don't touch me. Just ask.
Absolutely.
If you want
Yeah.
to know, just ask. If you want more information, just ask.
Right.
I think that's probably one of the best ways that a friend or a colleague that you really get along with can be the best ally, is just
Right.
just to tell people, people that they know, other people they work with, just ask or call somebody out, say at the water
Yeah,
cooler,
speak up.
that's really not cool. That's not funny.
Exactly.
It's not cool.
Right. And that's what a good advocate and ally and friend will do, is say, like, you know, don't touch her hair. Like, stop. And I've had people do that, like, back up. It's really not an appropriate time to reach out and try to I would never reach out and put my fingers through anyone's hair unless I really had that bond and relationship that I've formed. Of course, like with friends, I'm like, oh, you got your hair colored, I love it, can I touch it, it looks soft? Absolutely, sure. But I think it's really important that if a potential ally or someone who really wants to help says, what can I do next time? If they are making that ask, what can I do to help next time? Ask them, hey, I need your voice as well. And if you can say, please stop and back me up, or really advocate for me, then that really forms a friendship and a bond with me. It shows me that you care about me and that you recognize these culturally sensitive situations where I don't have to explain and educate everyone around me. Maybe you can take some of that burden.
Right. I know during the George Floyd situation, I know in just talking to people, companies really were stepping up the conversation around diversity and racism, and being more inclusive, and how they could figure out how to do it. And even just recognizing, like, wow, you know what? We don't have any executives of color. We don't have any executives that are women. We don't have anybody here to even coach, consult. We don't have anyone on staff with DEI experience to help us navigate this. We haven't even thought about it. So, now's the time. It seems like it's like the thing to do. Do you think like it's a temporary thing, like it's now over, or do you think companies and businesses are now still pushing for that?
So, unfortunately, from what I've seen, it was a phase and a shiny object for a lot of companies. It was I think companies used it as a quote unquote wake up call, but what we saw was just a flurry of just DEI trainings, which I facilitate trainings, but I recognize that there's more needed. There's consulting. There's actually a training isn't going to move a Black woman into leadership. A training is just going to cause awareness and say, wow, I really have never thought of this before. But trainings can actually traumatize the most marginalized people who have marginalized identities by saying, like, hey, wow, like, here's diversity, equity, inclusion, or here's anti-racism, but it really doesn't give any tangible steps. And I try to have my trainings have a call to action and have actually tangible tips where you can say, this is what we're going to actually do as a company to stop microaggressions. This is what we're going to do to think about inclusive hiring. But what I've seen is that the big focus back then was, let's add more diversity at the entry level, which, all of a sudden there's a bunch of diverse people at entry level, but they're stopped at a certain point. They don't make it to the C-suite. They don't make it to leadership because it's really just performative. It's really just a look at, like, 20% of our new hires were Black and brown, and, maybe they're part of the LGBTQ plus community. But I think the problem is for companies to really actually commit to this movement is that they have to do the hard work of understanding, number one, how systemic oppression works. Number two, acknowledge that these systems are present in the workplace around racism, white supremacy, homophobia. All of these things are actually capitalism. They are ingrained within the workplace. And until they're willing to build new systems that are more equitable, then it's just going to be the same thing over again. It's going to be a twice a year DEI training, and that's going to be them feeling good and the executive saying, well, at least we did a DEI training. company, but they're really not invested in anything further than that. And that's the big problem since June of 2020, is that very few, I would say 5% of companies are actually invested in making systemic change through, actually promoting and hiring diverse leadership and really making programs that will support the most marginalized voices in their company. Many, they just really don't care. They care about the optics.
Wow. And speaking of optics, how do you, as the professional, walk into these companies? What is your style when you walk in the door? Do you walk in all your glory, like I am here. You're going to see all of me, authentically me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say yes. I come in as myself. I come in with big curly hair. I come in sometimes with braids. I come in with funky glasses on. I come in with color. I come in, my signature is like a brightly colored lip or a red lip or a purple lip or something like that, lipstick. And that's just me. They're going to get me. And I've done that on purpose before, especially facilitating conversations around agency and authenticity. So I make sure proactively to come as I am, because when I come and I use the language I use, and when I come and I show up looking the way I do, I spark something in someone else that says it's okay for me to show up as I am. It's okay for me to talk about my life experiences if I feel comfortable. It's okay for me to wear something fun and colorful and different, even if everyone else is wearing black or white button-up shirts or something like that. It's really important for me because I suppressed so much of that so long working in a very white space. It's really important for me to show up as the Black woman that I am and show up confidently and do fun hairstyles and just play. I think style is about play, and I'm all about play.
Perfect. This was such a great conversation, very enlightening, very informative. How can we get in contact with you, Simone?
Absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me there. I post there sometimes. I am very often on Instagram, so you can find me at Simone.McNish on Instagram. And I'm even trying out TikTok too. So you can find me at the same handle on TikTok. So I write blogs on my website too. And if you're on Instagram or LinkedIn, then you'll see the link to my website and my blog as well. So yeah.
And you guys know you can always find me, Yo Taylor, at thestyletable.com. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, at the Style Table LLC, also at the Style Table LLC on YouTube, where you can find this particular interview and many others. Have a great day. Bye.